The Supreme Court weakens the Voting Rights Act, opening the door for a rush to redistrict in the handful of states that haven't had primaries. James Comey makes his first court appearance in the federal case of threatening seashells. President Trump calls 86 a mob term. His acting attorney general defends the indictment. The Federal Reserve keeps interest rates where they are. Oil trades well above $100 per barrel, and gas prices now average $4.23 per gallon, a new high for the year as the war with Iran hits the 60-day mark. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in New York. Welcome to The Takeout. When it comes to voting representation in modern post-Jim Crow America, there are many ways to measure. Access at the voting booth is one. Numerical representation in Congress is another. The landmark 1965 Voting Rights Act addressed both head-on. Section 2 of that act, which the Supreme Court eroded today, intentionally attempted to increase minority representation nationwide in Congress by allowing for the drawing of so-called majority-minority districts, even if the drawing of those district lines were unusual in geographic ways so as to knit together minority voting blocks. Now, in 1980, the Supreme Court restrained the interpretation of that act by saying Section 2 only prohibited district lines that prevented minority representation on purpose. Congress stepped in 1982 to say no, Section 2 barred district lines that had discriminatory effect. It didn't need to be on purpose. If the effect was discriminatory, it could be challenged in court. And that interpretation held for decades until today, when a 6-3 majority on the High Court ruled that the benefit of drawing district lines with the intent of increasing minority representation had to be weighed against other considerations, specifically equal protection clause protections in the Constitution against discrimination suffered in this particular litigation by white voters who sued to block creation of a second congressional district in Louisiana, which, as you can see here, stretches from Shreveport in the northwestern part of the state to Baton Rouge in the southeastern part of the state. With more on this decision, the dissent to it, and the possible political implications, we turn to our chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford. Jan, walk us through what happened.
Well, I mean, Major, I think you've really kind of nailed all of it. I mean, it's going to make it much harder for people to justify these so-called majority-minority districts that, as you said, were designed to increase representation in Congress. The way people done it was they would argue that we needed this district, under Section 2, that key provision, the crown jewel of the Voting Rights Act. And so, therefore, you could consider race when you were drawing it and do those kind of long lines like you just showed. But today, the court in that 6-3 decision said that looking to that section in the Voting Rights Act could not justify violating the Constitution, and that, only intentional discrimination would really kind of justify focusing on race when you're drawing up these districts. Now, Justice Alito, who wrote this decision for the court's conservatives, a 6-3 ruling, as you said, spoke of kind of the vast social change that's happened across the country, and particularly in the Deep South, where most of these districts have been drawn, as he suggested that now going forward, that discrimination, before you can use race and look at race and really any government action, needs to be intentional present-day discrimination. But like you said, a very sharp dissent from the liberals led by Justice Elena Kagan.
And it's always problematic, Jan, to talk about race and political orientation in a strictly partisan way. But historically, Democrats have benefited from this, and Republicans were essentially glad to see what the Supreme Court did. And it might kick off in some states that haven't had primaries yet an effort to redistrict as a result of this.
Absolutely. And there's no question that Democrats have been the big winner of this kind of majority-minority districting. It's a way that they could get a seat or two in some of these deep South states that are, those kind of dark red states, as we've seen, whether it's Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. And so right now we've got 60 or so members of Congress who are black. Of those, 12 to 15 are in districts that are majority minority. You may see an effort to reconfigure some of those, but to your point, with those midterms looming, primaries around the corner, early filing days, it's going to be hard for most of them to do anything in the short term. Louisiana, they've got a little of a head start. They may be able to do it. Alabama, perhaps. But by and large, it'll be kind of difficult. But Major, this case, we cannot understate. It's not the short term. The midterms, yes, important. But this case will affect redistricting and how states can draw those lines for decades to come or years to come. Who knows? Until the next Supreme Court comes in and potentially changes it.
Jan Crawford, as always, thank you so much. For the first time since the start of the war with Iran, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth testified on Capitol Hill. Here is some of what he had to say.
President Trump, unlike other presidents, has had the courage to ensure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, and he's ironclad. The biggest challenge, the biggest adversary we face at this point are the reckless, feckless, and defeatist words of congressional Democrats and some Republicans.
Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman joins me now. Senator, always good to have you on the program. You have been, in general, supportive of this war effort and the prosecution thereof. Are you still supportive of the war aims and how it's going?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I support that. I think what Secretary Hegseth said, I wouldn't use the kind of terms and I wouldn't have the kind of insults. But, part of it, without a doubt, the Iranian regime, absolutely, the Iranian regime, loves the Democrats. Absolutely. For me, because I think it's necessary to hold the Iranian regime accountable. And we really must demand that they can't have a nuclear bomb. And absolutely, I support that. And that happens to be the most toxic person for a Democrat to agree with right now with President Trump. But I follow the truth in that. That's why I think it's important. I'm going to continue to vote and to support epic fury.
And when the defense secretary says the biggest adversary the Pentagon faces right now is Democrats on Capitol Hill and some discouraged Republicans, do you agree with that?
I'm saying like the issue is that what we constantly remind the Iranian regime is we have to hang on to 60 days, and then now we can vote and stop epic fury for that. I think we should all just be unified right now, because it wasn't that long ago all the Democrats, rightly said we must never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb. And here we are at the cusp. Why can't we just empower the president to direct the military at one point, make sure Iran can't build a nuclear bomb? That's why we're here. We're $25 billion in, 60 some days coming up. Why would we just vote now, stop, and walk away and back away and allow Iran have the possibility to ever build a nuclear bomb?
Senator, do you believe that the negotiations going on right now can, in fact, create a deal to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, and the regime that is in power will be willing to enforce that deal?
Well, what I'm hoping is I love to watch with the blockade and break the Iranian regime. Without a doubt, they are choking off their lifeblood of oil, and now they're quickly running out of their ability to store oil. But they must continue to produce that oil. But if they shut down those oil wells, effectively that's a death sentence to those wells. So can we continue to inflict damage and now push the Iranian regime closer to possibly a regime change? But, the simple goal of this war must be, we must never allow them to build a nuclear bomb. And now we don't have to agree with everything with epic fury that's happened. But since we're here, why can't we just collectively demand, all right, let's make sure that we force them to turn over the nuclear material at this point?
You and I were both at the White House. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mary. Let me say this.
Yeah.
It was never controversial for a Democrat to say this. 3 months ago, every single Democrat would have said that. We can't allow Iran to build a nuclear bomb. Kamala Harris, running for president, said Iran was her single biggest concern in international. Here we are, $25 billion in, with the Iranian regime battered. Let's finish it off.
Many Democrats, to that point, Senator Fetterman, said that they would have preferred that the president, meaning President Trump, stick with the Iran nuclear deal negotiated by then President Obama. Are you happy that the president, meaning President Trump, got rid of that deal and is now using this kinetic warfare to try to achieve the same goal?
Now, clearly, I'm not going to criticize President Obama for that. Definitely that was an option and pursue that, but it really wasn't effective. It wasn't working because Iran, let's be honest, Iran was always going to try to acquire a nuclear bomb. They don't need nuclear, peaceful kinds of thing. And there's no moderates in the Iranian regime either. That was always their goal. And that allowed them to just put it off and pretend and hide behind that. So holding them accountable in a kinetic way, I support that. I'm going to continue to support that. And why Democrats never have, for me, that's why it's largely defined by the TDS. And when something that we used to all unanimously agree, now unanimously with essentially just me, besides me, doesn't support those things. Why?
TDS, a reference, I presume, to Trump derangement syndrome. In that regard, Senator, you and I were both at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. First, your reaction to what happened that night in the moment, as you recall it, and what, if anything, do you believe the relevance is of what happened Saturday night, the attack on the president and other senior officials that was attempted, and the need or necessity for a White House ballroom?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You were there, Major, right? You couldn't, how packed that is. And you all know where we were all sitting. And you had, Rubio, you have Hegseth, you have Vance, you have President Trump. We have all of these people within effectively, 200 square feet. And now we all remember Oklahoma bomb back in 1995. Could you imagine if whether it's Iran or whether if it's enough people organize this to place the bomb, in there, and that could have turned that quickly into like a decapitation of our nation there, depending on how successful that is. We can't ever allow to put our line of succession in that kind of close places, and definitely not in the kind of a facility just like that. So for me, that's why I'm always going to continue that. Let's just move on and let's put in a ballroom.
Senator, we have a picture of you at the event, and it doesn't appear that you are kneeling down or taking cover at any level. Did you at all, or did you feel fearful enough to do that?
Well, it wasn't about a fearful thing, but it's like, clearly something dangerous was happening, and I just wanted to witness this and find out what it is, or maybe if there's someone trying to charge the stage or whatever. I just wanted to be very present there, and I'm not gonna, hide under a table, though.
Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right.
Former FBI Director James Comey made his first appearance in court today after being charged with making threats to President Trump with seashells that spelled out 8647. You see them there. Here was the president on this matter this afternoon.
Well, if anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill 'em.
On CBS Mornings, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche told me that President Trump did not direct him to prosecute the former FBI director. Here was some of our conversation. Let's do a compare and contrast, Mr. Blanche. In 2022, someone well known in right-wing circles, Jack Posobiec, posted on X 8646. He did not take it down. He did not apologize. Mr. Comey has done both of those things. The Biden Justice Department never prosecuted him. By the standard of that grand jury, Jack Posobiec should face charges as well. Will the Justice Department pursue that case? Because they sound very similar.
That's just completely not true. That's not how a grand jury does its work. They don't just look at a single image and then say, okay, yes, we'll indict, or okay, no, we won't indict. They do an investigation. This conduct took place in May of last year, May 15th. It has been almost a year. I assure you, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office have not been sitting around doing nothing. They have been investigating. I have no idea whether there was an investigation into the other times that post has been made and whether that investigation yielded different results. This investigation that we undertook resulted in a 2-count indictment. So you cannot compare, well, what happened last time, what happened this time. Every investigation is different. You know that. The American people know that. A lot of factors go into whether somebody should or should not be charged. The mere fact that there's a similar photo posted or a similar statement made, that's true. Every day there's comments made about President Trump, threats made against President Trump. Every one of those are not indicted. It depends on the facts of every case.
Mr. Blanche, should the President of the United States in any way direct you to pursue this matter?
Of course not. Absolutely, positively not. And there's no suggestion that that's the case that happened. And the fact that we're doing our work, this is not something that just happened the past couple of weeks. This is something that has been investigated for nearly a year now. And the results of that investigation is a grand jury returns an indictment.
CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joins me now from our D.C. bureau. Jake, always good to see you. As we heard the acting attorney general say, this investigation has gone on for a year. Well, that's kind of a point that maybe the Comey defense attorneys might raise because, as I understand it, and I believe as you understand it, Jake, it was looked into a year ago and more or less not dropped, but it didn't go very far.
That's right, Major. I actually just got off the phone with somebody who worked in the Southern District of New York with Todd Blanche, who said if this message, this photo that was taken about a year ago was such a true threat, and we know that James Comey met with Secret Service investigators shortly after that post was then deleted and Comey apologized for making it, that why would you have let this man, or no matter who it is, whether it's the former FBI director or just a John Doe on the street, remain out in the public life? That certainly goes back to what we saw at the press conference yesterday, in which the Attorney General and FBI Director Kash Patel said that there was some kind of ongoing investigation and that, yes, while we might not know everything, this indictment, Major, is very simple. It lays out that this picture was simply posted and therefore it's two different charges, an interstate threats against the president charge and also a threat to injure the president charge. Each of those would face about 5+ years in prison, plus potentially other fines and penalties if he's actually found guilty. And this is likely to get challenged on a number of different things, not just the First Amendment grounds that are really thrown into really up in the air as a result of this. This is just not typically something the Department of Justice would go after someone for, but also a number of grounds, including selective and vindictive prosecution, which James Comey's legal team said in court today they're going to do because President Trump's animus across social media and public statements for about 10 years or so has been so profound that they're willing to challenge that this case was brought simply because it's the former FBI Director, James Comey.
And Jake, as I understand it, we learned quite a bit more about the suspect charged in the White House Correspondents' Dinner attack or attempted attack, including, if I believe we have it, a selfie that the suspect took in his own hotel room at the Washington Hilton before. Control room, if we can bring that up, and then we'll have Jake talk about other things we've learned. If we have it, maybe not. Well, Jake, you just take it away.
Sure. So
there
you should see, and then that picture, Major, we see a selfie taken by Cole Allen, the alleged suspect in this attack. You see knives strapped to his belt, a bag where the guns were allegedly stored. And we learned a little bit more about the timeline of all of this, including that he went downstairs, left his hotel room about 12 minutes before the attack began. In addition to that, just a more thorough timeline than we got in the initial charging documents. Cole Allen will be in court tomorrow, where his defense team will have the ability to fight what the Department of Justice put in paperwork today, which is that he should remain in pretrial detention as this case plays out. And then going into early next month, Major, there will be an arraignment. Well, he'll have to plead guilty or not guilty to these charges that he's initially charged with, the 3 charges, including an assassination attempt on the president, plus other charges, as Attorney General Todd Blanche and others have said are coming.
In the era of the selfie, sometimes selfie can be self-incriminating. It may very well be in this case. Jake Rosen, thanks very much. For its 3rd consecutive meeting, the Federal Reserve left its benchmark interest rate unchanged. That is not completely unexpected. Kelly O'Grady joins us now from the New York Stock Exchange with that and the state of the U.S. economy in terms of oil prices trading up above $100 today and a record for at least this year in gas prices. Kelly, take it away.
Yeah, that's right, Major. Definitely the decision was completely expected. But Powell really did emphasize everything that you just mentioned with rising oil prices, gas prices, and the concern that it's not just going to stay localized to energy inflation, that this could impact other parts of the economy. Remember, that's what we saw back in summer of 2022 when we had inflation over 9%. So that was really sort of the messaging that that's the focus while the labor market seems to be stable, though I think if you're in specific industries, you probably would beg to differ with that statement. Two things that really stood out to me. One, it wasn't a unanimous decision. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it was actually a split decision 8-4. That is the biggest dissent that we have seen since 1992. Only one person actually dissented about leaving interest rates steady. One person wanted to cut it. But the messaging was that they really didn't like, there was a particular line in the announcement that suggested maybe interest rate cuts would be coming in the future, and 3 members really didn't like that. And so to me, that really spells out that there is just some kind of division, and that Kevin Warsh might be walking into a Federal Reserve Board that doesn't want to cut interest rates. Second thing, Powell made news. He's staying on as governor, Major. He's not getting out after the Fed chair position is up. He's going to stay.
Kelly O'Grady, that is great stuff from the New York Stock Exchange about the economy, the messaging, and Jerome Powell's future. Appreciate it very much. Still to come on the Takeout, Massachusetts Democratic Congresswoman and my House Minority Whip, Katherine Clark, her take on the state of ongoing DH shutdown, stalled talks, what's going on, is it going to be resolved? She has some answers. Also, candidates for governor of California, well, they have another debate hosted by CBS. One of the moderators of that debate will join us. Plus, new polling on how voters, well, generally believe Democrats are in a better position in the midterms than Republicans. Our political panel will discuss that and a lot more. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. Massachusetts Congresswoman and House Minority Whip Katherine Clark joins me now from Capitol Hill. Congresswoman, great to have you with us. First, I'd like your reaction to what the Supreme Court ruled today regarding the Voting Rights Act, specifically Section 2.
Yeah, good to be with you, Major. Today's opinion is another devastating blow to fair elections in our country. And listen, this is what we know. Republicans are looking at the same polls that we are. They know they're losing, and they're going to use every tool they have to try and choose their voters instead of having voters choose them. So this is an extremely concerning opinion coming out of the Supreme Court. But we are going to continue every single day to use every tool we have to make sure that we have secure, fair districts and elections come this November.
So the litigation that led to this opinion was long running, not necessarily in this particular election cycle, but it could have implications for the handful of states that might attempt to redistrict as a result of today's ruling. Do you believe that in any way could tip the scales in the upcoming midterms?
Yeah, I mean, we are sitting in a minority in Congress right now because North Carolina took away 3 Democratic seats through gerrymandering in 2024. So we are very aware of the real world implications. But as we have said, if they are going to try and cheat to win this election, we're going to meet them in every single way we can. And so far, with their attempts to gerrymander their way into a majority, we've been able to do just that, whether it's our success in California, blocking them in Ohio, the most recent victory in Virginia. And the difference between Democrats and Republicans is Republicans do backdoor, backroom, last-minute deals. We go to the voters and let them decide. And that's exactly how we are going to continue to operate. And I can tell you the American people are with us, and it's why we're going to win in November.
Today is the 60th day of the war with Iran, and before the House Armed Services Committee, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said this war has cost at least $25 billion to date. Do those two facts in any way change, from your perspective, the course of congressional debate about war resolution powers or the duration of this conflict?
It certainly emphasizes the need for us to have a war powers resolution and to get fully from this administration what their strategy is and what their exit strategy is. What we saw from the secretary today, all of this should have been done before they went to war. And not only have they cost $25 billion in outright military costs, but the cost to the American people at the pump is crippling. $1.25 up on average, the price per gallon from where we were before Donald Trump's war is another pressure point on families who are already telling us they're not making it. I don't understand why this administration that came in on two fundamental promises, lower costs and no new wars, has completely abandoned the American people and the promises that he made to them.
Congresswoman, my colleague Nicole Skanga reports today that the Coast Guard is due, if there is no congressional action, to run out of funding May 1st. When is this Department of Homeland Security standoff going to end, and when are those good people for all those various agencies going to have reliable funding for their operations?
Major, thank you for raising this. And that question has to be directed at one particular group of Republicans, the House GOP, because they are the only ones standing in the way from paying FEMA, the Coast Guard, TSA agents, customs agents, literally over 100,000 employees. The Senate Republicans have agreed. The Secretary of DHS is asking House Republicans to pass the bill that they have been sitting on for weeks. House Democrats have said, we will help you pass this in any way we can. We have the votes. Let us help you get to yes. And, and Senate Democrats. The Senate passed this unanimously. There was a memo from the White House today to the House GOP saying, get this done. Don't hold the hardworking people of our Homeland Security apparatus hostage for your internal party conflicts. But that's exactly what they continue to do. We are going to keep the pressure up on them to get everyone fully paid and reopened. This is so long overdue. This has been a proposal from the early days, within 72 hours of this shutdown starting, by Democrats. Take yes for an answer, House Republicans, and reopen DHS.
Congresswoman Catherine Clark, Minority Whip of the House. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Major.
Last night, CBS hosted a debate for the top candidates vying to be California's next governor. We'll discuss what happened with one of the moderators when we come back. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. 6 Democrats, 2 Republicans met on the debate stage last night for the second debate in California's open, meaning nonpartisan primary for governor. Now, the candidates did what candidates always do. They sparred over this, they sparred over that, but there's one thing they more or less agreed about. California's kind of a mess. Listen.
We have the highest rent in the United States of America.
The thing that's been missing in this conversation on homelessness is let's prevent people from losing their home.
One of the biggest reasons we're not growing jobs is we don't have anywhere for workers to live.
We need to make structural change in every one of the places where Californians can't afford to live.
My mother was an immigrant who came here from Panama, and she bought a home, and everyone should have the opportunity. It's slipping away.
The gas tax, it is the most regressive tax in California.
An absolute failed Democrat progressive agenda that is destroying California.
We've got to be a state again where we build things.
CBS News' Julie Watts was one of the moderators. She joins us from the Ontario airport. Julie, it's great to see you. It sounded like kind of a low-level indictment of Governor Gavin Newsom and the Democratic legislature in California. At least that's how I read it.
You know,
I think a lot of these problems have been around since before Governor Newsom, but yes, that is how at least the Republican candidates would frame it. This is all Governor Newsom and the Democratic legislature's fault. It's interesting because a couple of those candidates on stage were part of the Democratic legislature when some of these bills and these policies were first enacted. And Antonio Villaraigosa, we're showing right there, he was the Assembly Speaker, one of the most powerful roles in the state, and then went on to be LA mayor and told me in our interview, our one-on-one interview series, that he realized once he became mayor, the sort of impact of some of the legislative policies they're passing. So I would say it's probably not just the current governor and the current legislature, but I will say our Democratic super majority, which makes us really a one-party state, has very little sort of input or negotiation from the other side. I think that is what they would all say probably has a little bit to do with where we're at right now.
And Julia, almost everyone on the debate stage had some idea about how to make California more affordable, how to make things less expensive. And you had a back and forth that I think was really important with Javier Becerra about one idea he's introduced in this campaign. Let's play that.
California Supreme Court ruled that temporary price freezes were unconstitutional. What would make your proposed state of emergency different than that?
I am calling for a freeze. I am calling for an opportunity to sit everyone down. I am calling for an opportunity to reveal behind the curtain what insurance companies are doing.
But if the court's already ruled that that was unconstitutional, how is your plan different?
Well, Julie, I'd like to go to court with you on that one. I was the Attorney General of the state of California, and I did defend our people to try to get the lowest cost. And I'd be willing to go to court to tell you that I could call that freeze, even though you're telling me we can't.
That's a freeze in insurance premiums, as I understand it, Julie. And there is going to be a lot of, I think, voter curiosity about promises, plans, and what the fine print of these promises and plans are for a lot of the Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, so, Major, that was sort of my role, my assignment for this debate was I was basically told, do an accountability interview with 8 people live in 28 minutes. It's not been done before, so it could have gone either way. But what you see there is an example of that. These candidates are going out and they're making these promises that many of us know are not actually possible. The governor does not have the authority to freeze insurance rates. And listen, it's their job, right, to tell people how they're going to fix things. The problem is some of these folks can't actually do what they're promising. So that was the point of my segment in our debate last night, was to really push back and get them to explain, well, how do you think you can do that? And if you can't, what are the other options? In this case, listen, insurance in California is regulated under a voter-passed proposition. Those rates are regulated by the insurance commissioner, and he is mandated to increase rates based on certain criteria. So the fact that the 2 candidates have said they wanted to freeze rates, it's just not possible. I mean, you heard him there say, okay, I'll take it to court. And certainly he could try, and then he could go to court. And that will be interesting if he is our next governor. And frankly, Javier Becerra right now among the Democrats is polling very high. So he may very well be our next governor, and I'll be looking forward to seeing him go to court and try it.
And Julie, what is the state of the race? Not the debate, because I'm not asking you to be a theater critic. You're an accountability journalist, and that was the role you played last night, and quite well, if I do say so myself. What's the state of the race?
You know what? I think the answer to that is we absolutely don't know. We saw Matt Mahan's sort of cred go up last night. He's now sort of neck and neck with Katie Porter. You've got Steyer, Becerra, sort of at the top right now. But they're all within a few percentage points. And I think in most of these polls within the margin of error. So I don't know that we're going to know until, in fact, I don't even know, because we're a mostly mail-in ballot state, that we'll know on Election Day. I think it may be a few weeks before we figure out who the top Democrat is. Now, you can see there is a spread between the 2 Republican candidates, Bianco and Hilton. And Hilton has really pulled ahead here. Bianco is very much the MAGA candidate. And I think a lot of folks are saying, you can kind of cap out there. So, I guess it's a wait and see, Major.
And we will keep checking in with you, Julie Watts. The big X factor, 26% in that poll you just saw, still undecided. Thanks so very much.
Sure.
Much like our show this week, the British Royals, well, they're in New York City. We tried to get together. My schedule is just way too intense. But anyway, our political panel here in New York will discuss the visit and a lot else. That's coming up here on the Takeout. Welcome back to the Takeout, where my Staten Island guys were yakking it up just a second ago. New polling from Emerson College shows Democrats with an advantage ahead of the midterms over, well, that other party, Republicans. Generic congressional ballots, what it's called. Democrats polled 50%, Republicans 40%. That's 10 points, according to my live math. Always dangerous for me, live mathematics. Political panel time. I just mentioned former Democratic Congressman, New York, Max Rose, Republican strategist, and former New York City Council member, Joe Borelli. They're both from Staten Island.
That's right.
Gentlemen, I will not try to mirror the bald head or beard thing, but I'm glad we've all got the bluish blazer and the white open collar shirt. We got it going. All right. So, Max, you know from tidal forces in politics, sometimes individual members of Congress don't have a lot of control over them.
Sure.
Are Republicans looking at something like an undertow with that generic number I just read off there?
Yeah, I mean, this is a wave year.
You think?
That there's no doubt about it at this point. And I'll tell you how I know. You're going to see my friend Joe Borelli move very quickly from being a partisan Republican to an apolitical pundit when he's talking about this election coming up. Because the truth of the matter is that no Republican right now can honestly look in front of the camera and say that their party has a fighting chance in this upcoming election.
Okay. Joe, you heard the challenge. Are you going to be a generic sort of milquetoast, common sense political
I'm not
pundit?
listening to this guy. Come on, give me a break. Generic ballots are generic, right? They don't actually calculate the meat and
Meaning
potatoes.
the individual
It's
always a choice.
They're not polling
It
the
obscures the actual
races.
choice.
We had a Supreme Court case out today, changing the district maps in Louisiana potentially. We have
Possibly Tennessee, possibly
Tennessee.
Alabama.
We have Florida. So, like a lot of this battle for the House of Representatives is going to play out in the
And
courtroom
still yet to be
over
fought,
the next.
from your
correct,
point of view.
Correct. It's still going to be played out over the next couple of months. That said, the generic ballot is still a generic ballot. We're not talking about the individual races. There's headwinds, but I doubt it's going to be a wave year. We saw the polls in 2016. Were they right or wrong? They were wrong. Were the polls in 2020 right or wrong? They were wrong. 2024, wrong again. They undercounted voter propensity on the Republican side, and they undercounted the result. Trump is a vote getter for and against. People love him, people hate him. And I think the Republican Party needs to actually get him more associated with the ballot, have him out there more, because the Democrats are going to run against Trump, and they're going to get motivated. The Republicans need to paint the case that he's on the ballot also.
Interesting. We'll get to the king and queen who are not making it to Staten Island to their ever-loving regret.
It's a tragedy.
It is. We'll get to that in a second. Punchbowl, I pay a lot of attention to our good friends at Punchbowl News. And they had something this morning in their morning newsletter I want to read to you. Quote, Donald Trump is underwater in districts that he won in 2024. To your point from just a second ago, Joe, let me continue reading. Trump won Representative Brian Stile, he's a Republican from Wisconsin, district by 5 points in 2024. But in this new polling, Trump's image is upside down by 7 points. Trump's job approval rating is upside down by 5 points. Representative Jeff Hurd, Republican in Colorado, swing district for Trump, swung for Trump by 10 points in the last election. But now the president's image is -4, his job approval -2. So to your point from a second ago, Joe, those are specific places, specific names, and Trump's a drag.
Look, we got our work cut out for us. We're in the middle of a war. The gas prices are higher. These are two things that actually matter to Americans. But this is still 6 months away from the election cycle. He has to finalize some conclusion to the Iran war. That has to happen. And we saw that the gas prices are pretty volatile. We saw the price of oil very volatile reaction when the Strait of Hormuz was rumored to be open. We saw the price drop down.
A lot of rumors there.
So I think that once the solution is actually the map is there.
Stop rumoring, more reality is what you're saying.
I think it's a fair assessment.
This is like an arsonist saying, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to put on a firefighter outfit. I mean, he started the war in Iran. In the end, Donald Trump ran for president and was successful, running on a laser-focused agenda that basically said 3 things. Said, I'm not going to engage in any forever wars. Said, I'm going to fight inflation and achieve affordability for the American people. And he said that he's not going to be woke. Truth of the matter is he's only accomplished one of those 3 things, and he has ignored the other 2. And that's why his base is revolting against him. We all know Democrats are always going to hate the guy. Independents are for grabs, but in a midterm election, who knows how much that matters.
They're trending against Republicans right now.
Base enthusiasm is what decides midterm elections. And right now, the Republican base is either depressed or in open revolt. And that's as clear as day.
Let me ask you a New York-specific question about Mayor Mamdani. Max, and then Joe. Max?
Is there a question?
Yeah,
how's he doing?
Yeah. How do you assess him about 120 days, 130 days in?
Sure. So I would say that his practice of politics itself is impressive. the degree to which he is being the pothole mayor, the degree to which he is out there in a very consistent basis.
Visible.
I think that's impressive. There is no doubt about it. I think the notion in which he has turned tax policy and alienating the tax base in New York City,
the wealthy tax base,
into an ideological exercise is potentially an effort to cut off our nose to spite our face. Right? In the end, right, there's a massive problem in the United States of America of rising wealth inequality and tax unfairness. But I don't want to see our tax base eroded in such a significant manner just to make that point.
Joe? Mayor Mamdani.
Look, voters in New York, as in California, as in other big cities, they are willing to some degree to pay a higher premium to live in a city, and oftentimes they're run by Democrats. The problem they face is that when the city appears to be run poorly and people feel like their money's being lit on fire, I think that's where they lose sort of that connection with this high tax, high spend state and city. And I think Mamdani's running into that problem. He ran on basically everything's going to be free, and now 4 months into it, it's actually, hey, we don't have money to do any of those things.
Although the tax, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday on the program, the pied-à-terre tax.
It's a clever one.
Yes, and it's supported by the governor.
Well, look,
Governor Hochul.
It's clever, right? It's taking the very people who left New York State and maybe moved to Florida or South Carolina, people who are wealthy enough to keep their apartment here. Mm-hmm. It's taxing those people. So I give him some credit for being really finding a creative way to tax some of the wealth that has left the city already.
Max Rose, great to have you here. Joe Morelli, great to have you here.
Thank you.
Like the Blazers, but I will not do this, gentlemen. I just will not. Up next, our continuing series to bring you pieces of CBS radio history, because I love CBS radio, particularly on the news side. We'll venture back more than 90 years to a New Year's celebration across the pond. That's next, here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Now for our CBS radio clip of fame. Radio, by its very nature, is a theater of the mind experience. As you listen, you imagine what's happening. That's why the word pictures of CBS correspondents have been and remain compelling. But tonight, no word pictures required. Our clip tonight is also a nod to the visit here in New York right now of King Charles and Queen Camilla. This is the sound of the bells of Big Ben in London, ringing in the new year. That new year? 1933. Let the sound wash over you. You might even want to close your eyes and imagine a bygone past coming back to us now.
We have listened to an echo of 1933 as it burst upon our sister nation across the sea. In London, Big Ben has rung out the old year and rung in the new. This presentation was announced by Paul Douglas. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
As you saw in some of those still photographs, Big Ben was undergoing some renovations. The bells, though, loud as ever, and brought to American homes in a new way by CBS Radio in 1933. Happy Wednesday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Daily Report coming up next.